might need to kill a mic somewhere. All right. So, to kick us off here and make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, if you were to explain Sprinklr to a classroom of kids, what would you say about what the company does and what you do there?
Well, we provide a platform for large global businesses to do all the customer-facing functions, from customer service to marketing and customer feedback on a single unified technology platform.
And how would you say generative AI has changed your world?
It's funny that we're all talking about AI and generative AI now. Most people don't realize it's been around for a while, and it's just the evolution has been very, very gradual. So we went all AI and AI first about 5-6 years ago. And the reason we had to do that was because we actually bring in data from all publicly available sources. And when you're dealing with this unstructured text in over 100 languages, without AI, there's not much you can do with it. It's not like you can run a query. And so we went AI first a long time ago and developed the ability to understand intent and sentiment and process unstructured information. And generative AI came on the scene about a year ago. And for us, that was godsend, because now we could just also complete the conversation, not just process that information. So we've been, I like to say, at the forefront of this, and it's very exciting. I think I know there's a lot of hype here today and around the world, but my opinion is it's AI is underhyped. I think there's a lot more potential here than we can even imagine.
So let's talk about that potential, but also some of the cautions that you might have, because you have been at the forefront of that, and a number of founders might be trying to think about this transition for themselves, how you go from SaaS in a more traditional sense to then being more AI forward, and now this next transition. What was your thinking process as you went from an AI first company to really integrating generative into your products?
For us, this was very seamless and natural, because remember, we're in the conversation management business. When you call customer service, let's say you're calling your telco or your phone company, or reaching out to any brand, you're just having a conversation. You're just telling them what you need or what's wrong. So developing the ability to understand the conversation and speak back automatically was just a very natural progression for us from where we started. And we do all this stuff like call routing and ticketing and all that, but our value prop is the ability to manage these conversations. So being able to emulate what human beings can do was very logical for us.
Can you give specific examples of how your processes changed?
Yeah. Look, I think let's take the call center. It's probably the easiest to understand. I'll give you a couple of examples, one from call center and the phone, and the other one in marketing. On the call center side, most of us are used to customer service being available from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And most of us are used to, if you call a large company, a prompt-based system that says press 1, IVR it's called, press 1 if you want credit card support, press 2. It's a very laborious process and clunky to go through. God forbid you make a mistake, you can't come back. Now imagine the ability to bypass all of that. Like if you talk to HDFC Bank, which is the 5th largest bank in the world and a customer of ours, you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to know what my credit card balance is. And we can identify you from your phone number or biometrically, and then it might ask you for a passcode, and you enter it, and it just spits out your credit card balance. And the ability to just have a conversation and have AI handle that as much as possible, and seamlessly transfer to a human being when it's not 100% confident of the response is a way you as a consumer, you're going to see your life change with AI. On the marketing side, we work with many, if not most, of the large global retailers. And I had one of the customers tell us this story on one of our AI conferences. And she said 80%, so this was a large grocery chain, retail store. She said 80% of my creative marketing budget now is optimized. So in the past, how if you're a grocery store, you have these large marketing coupon brochures that every product used to be shot and under certain lighting conditions. And if it didn't work, you had to go reshoot. Yeah. And if you came back and you're putting the catalog together, like I didn't like the color or the lighting, you had to reshoot the whole thing. All of this changed because right now they set up all the lighting they want once, and they just put the products and anything they want to change, and that would have taken, $5,000, $10,000 for. Right now, click of a button, the color, the lighting, the position, the font, everything changes. And she's like, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable! I've got a lot more flexibility than I ever had, and it's costing me 10%."
Yep, we're seeing that across all kinds of content creation. What would you say the biggest challenge was to integrating generative into your processes and into your products?
Well, it's not what was the challenge. It's an ongoing journey. And we're very, very early in generative AI. And look, we are in the enterprise business. So we work with large global companies. We work with most banks. So if you're using ChatGPT or if you're searching as a consumer, if you don't like what you see, what you get, you chuckle and you move on. But if you are a brand, if you are the government, you can't be off-brand. So the funky thing about generative AI, the way most consumers are experiencing it today, it's very unpredictable, which is kind of cute, but not if you're a brand, not if you are in a business context. So for us, the journey is building the application stack that sits on top of these LLMs that allow you to train on finite bound data, your website, your documents, really preserve the trail of why are you going to respond the way you're going to respond, audit trail it back if you have to, and then make sure that the answer is predictable and on brand 100% of the time. And that's going to be forever, because every time we build a model and optimize it for one customer, that's not going to be the perfect model for the next customer. So we're cranking out hundreds and thousands of models every year for every customer in every language. So what works for Coca-Cola in North America may not work in Arabic. Right. So it's just constantly optimizing it, training it, getting the feedback, and making sure that it's staying consistent and relevant in every part of the world.
Right. What have you learned along the way that might be helpful to some of the folks out here?
With AI and generative AI, man, I'm assuming most of you are either, have a startup or have a business, or obviously you're here thinking, so you're obviously thinking about AI. Like, I want you to really, really not solve it for today. I think the world as we know it is going to change dramatically in the next few years. So if you're writing software, for the entire history of software, we have imagined software interactions through the lens of a user interface. And you almost have to start thinking about conversation as the new UI. So you're not going to think about a menu, a click, a drop-down, options, and you're going to just reimagine it. Think about reporting as a conversation. Instead of giving a dashboard, you're going to be like, hey, what was the best performing product today? How many visitors came to my website? So interacting with software through the lens of conversation is sort of the first point I'd make. The second is traditionally software has been built on relational data, because the back end of a lot of this is reading and writing structured information. You have to reimagine it through the lens of unstructured data, because you have the ability to process large quantities of unstructured data, which is the more human way we think about it. Nobody thinks of name colon, address colon, account number colon, right? We just speak. So you got to think about unstructured data. You've got to think about conversations. And lastly, most software that's built, has some sort of a process workflow that's linear. So we think in process flow. That's how you program. You have to. It's not think that way. You have to think about AI driving non-linear interaction models, which hasn't been mainstreamed yet. So there's a lot of sort of future work you have to do when you're writing software or starting a company today, because otherwise you're going to find yourself in a few years having to redo everything.
Well, absolutely. And I was thinking, as we're talking about training models, we also need to untrain ourselves on a number of fronts, right, for how it is we function. What's something you're watching for right now in terms of developments in the landscape overall?
I think we don't have a societal model for dealing with this.
Yeah.
And I don't think most countries and governments are kind of working on something that we can universally agree. And I think we need a lot of, I think global conventions on how this is going to work. So, for example, what are the ethical considerations? Is who's going to take responsibility for something that a product does, or a software does, or a conversation that's not led by a human? Who pays the price if there's a mistake, right? Easy to understand if you think about autonomous driving. If a driverless car gets into an accident, what happens? But it's same is true for every industry. For a bank, if something is said or made, what are the cost implications, and who takes accountability for it? How do you communicate to each other that it's not you, but an AI model that's making those decisions?
Right.
So we actually need conventions and some broad guidelines on how we're going to infuse AI into everything we do, because I think that's inevitable.
It's where we're headed. Now, I'm grinning because you're the first founder who said on stage, "Oh yeah, the self-driving part, we can figure. That's not that hard." But I hear you in the larger, view of this. How do you deal with that uncertainty, though, in the global landscape as we're all looking to all these different types of regulation or lack of?
If you're an entrepreneur, you have to deal with uncertainty. I said this a week ago at one of my internal conferences. You guys know what the similarity between anxiety and excitement is? No, well, there's uncertainty on the other side. The difference between feeling anxious versus feeling excited is if you're feeling anxious, you're assuming what's on the other side is negative and it's going to hurt you. If you're excited, you're assuming that most likely on the other side is something positive, something that's going to be good for you. I'm an optimist. I'm very bullish on what's on the other side of this. So I'm actually not anxious. I'm super excited.
How are you brought up ethics a moment ago. How are you approaching ethics and data privacy? There's probably some learnings and advice you could offer to the folks here.
Yeah, I am a big first principles guy. So for me, everything points back to first principles. And if you think about first principles of doing things right, is A is disclosure. You have to always let people know how you're going to use AI, where you're going to use AI, make it super clear when something is done by AI versus a human, or whether the AI and the human are doing it together. The second is accountability. So you have to make it very clear that everything that I build, or my company builds, I'm going to take responsibility for.
Yeah.
If I'm a brand and I'm doing something that is AI aided, it's on me. It's no different from what the accountability I would take if I were doing it physically myself.
Right.
And lastly, it's safeguards. It's privacy and it's security, and it's to make sure that you're thinking about it from the get-go, and it's not an afterthought, and you're not doing something to be compliant. That's not the way to approach this.
Well, I was thinking about the flight that a chatbot promised. Was it Air Canada a couple of weeks ago? a chatbot said that, oh yes, we refund in these certain situations, or it'll be free, and then the question for a moment, we're like, but the AI said it, not me, and what that means for an enterprise.
And this is where you really have to be able to audit trail. If you're doing anything in the enterprise space, you have to be able to audit trail why is the model or why is the bot behaving a certain way, and you have to be able to go in and fix that. What version of the document did it come off? Which for consumer-facing stuff, it's not important.
Has anything surprised you throughout this? Again, because your surprises might be instructive.
I mean, nothing surprises me because I've gone through the same movie. Sprinklr started out in social media. And if you rewind the tape back to, 2005, 2010, there was all kinds of angst about the rise of social media. And before that, I did 3 companies before Sprinklr. And, the first one was during the .com time, and then again, the rise of the internet.
Sure.
So what's interesting and what's surprising for me again and again is we fall into the same trap where a new technology comes. We all get excited, everybody gets funded, and 99% of those companies don't make it. But those transformations are real, and you look at what happened with the web. There are trillion-dollar companies, that came out of that transformation, and AI is going to be another huge one. So it's funny how we all get excited again. We all fund 20,000 companies, and most of the hype eventually plays out, but only for a few companies that accumulate all the value.
So no surprises. Generative happened exactly when you thought it would.
Par for the course. It's exciting. The unknown is exciting. And you're blessed to be alive now.
This is all fair. All right, so we're on the SaaS stage. Any parting words of advice for people working in the environment?
Well, I think I would approach it with a lot of optimism. The world won't be the same. Jobs aren't going to be the same. But like with manufacturing, you don't need to manufacture. You actually need to quality control and ship. But the world needs all of us to be a lot more productive. I was in India last week speaking at a conference for a state in India, and the minister said to me that 60% of the jobs that are open in the government are unfilled because the government doesn't have the money to pay for it. So there is such enormous opportunities that can absorb the potential of AI. So I wake up, put on a big smile, and go build something.
All right. It's a nice note to close on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.